first guest here tonight is Neil Page, arguably perhaps one of the best left-hand pitchers ever produced by this state. So thank you for letting us into your home, Pagey, and allowing us to sit here and have a casual chat and talk about your history in baseball.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I really appreciate the invitation to be here.
Yeah, well, you're quite an interesting one, as in looking at your history and where it all started, and back at the Plympton Primary School as a youngster, your first sort of little steps into baseball.
Yes, well, Chalky White was one of my first coaches in Plympton Primary, and which continued on into high school further down the track. But yeah, that was my first steps into baseball, and I really enjoyed it as opposed to cricket.
Did you ever see yourself reaching the heights that you reached as a youngster and as a kid, embarking in this career of, into baseball, which, I mean, we sort of sit here and look at it now and it's growing some legs, but it really was a game that was full of flourish in your time. Baseball is not the obscure sport that I think everyone has this perception that it is.
No, I mean, as a kid, I just grew up and I just loved playing the game. And that's really basically all I did. And my skills got better and better and better with the help of coaches, obviously. And that's just the way I played the game.
And what was the format of baseball in your time? What was it as it is today with our sort of 12, 14 district clubs? And was the format the same, that you spread far and wide in the competition, or?
I think in those days there was probably 10 clubs, 10 or 12 as a maximum, and you started off in the juniors and then you progressed up through the minor ranks up to you got into minor A, and then you major B, major A were the next steps, and from there obviously if you're good enough you got into the state side and so forth and so on.
And where your first initial club was Glenelg Baseball Club?
No, in actual fact it was West Torrens. I played my first game at 9 when I was at West Torrens. We moved later on over to live in Camden, so obviously Glenelg was the next option. And my brother was playing there as well, Russell. He was about 3 or 4 years older, but he started off in the juniors as well and worked his way up to A grade.
Your parents were quite a prominent part of your baseball as well, and I've read, with the initiation into sort of night baseball, etc., your father was a very prominent figure in that actually occurring.
Well, he and a group of other people instigated the fact, and Dad did a lot of work in negotiating with Norwood Council to get Norwood Oval, and he instigated getting the lights put at Norwood Oval back for the start of the 1952 season. So he was a great innovator of night baseball, which was then progressed to be the strength in Australian baseball, because our competition was so much better because of the joined teams.
You've mentioned that to me quite a bit, and you're very passionate about that thought that perhaps our current setup could learn from your time with regards to condensing the teams and just trying to create a lot more quality than perhaps is on show on a week-to-week basis here.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because if you took, the 14 clubs we've got, combine them into say 6, you had an autonomous coach you could take from either club, and I think you'd find that the competition would get so much stronger, because you're not just pitching against a team that's batting from 1 to 4, they're batting from 1 to 7 or 8, and then you're facing a top pitcher every week, or top pitchers every week. And I think that would make our competition so much stronger for the betterment of baseball in South Australia.
Your time at Glenelg was an interesting time. You spent a lot of time in Major B, perhaps thinking that you should have been doing a little bit better, but you had a gentleman called Don Rice in your way, which was obviously a pretty hard stumbling block, because we're talking legends. Don was certainly one of those himself. So, both left-handers trying to do your stuff, and it was an interesting little journey there for a while.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Don won 5 caps medals. What can you say about the guy? I mean, he was one of the best around. There's no question about that. And it was hard to break in. So that's just the way it was. I finished up playing outfield a bit and things like that in the A grade side. And I was playing outfield, I think, when they won that premiership that year. So, yeah, but Don was the mainstay, and that's all there was to it. And I was only a kid.
And did you actually represent the state, picked from Major B?
I would have been A grade when that stateside in '64 was picked, yes. Okay. And Don was in it in Ian Chappell and what have you.
Yeah, how old were you then?
I would have been 20.
So still a young man, and really just had the 1 or 2 years of senior experience.
Yeah, I think I was in the Chrysler Cup, which was the triangle series with New South Wales and Victoria the year before. I think that's where it sort of stemmed from.
Yeah, you had some amazing success at state level.
Yeah, I was a bit lucky, I guess, where I had really good players around me. That was one of the best things. That, it's a team effort. Pitcher can be dominating, that's fine, but you've still got to have guys to field the ball and bat and all that sort of thing. So, I had some great players around me.
Yeah, you sure did. And obviously the interesting aspect with no DH, that pitchers hit for themselves.
We did. We all had to, and we were reasonable sort of hitters, actually. Yeah. Reasonable sort of hitters. I mean, they still do it in the National League in America, so... but yeah, here it's all changed.
Yeah, but sort of in some respect, as we know, they do protect those pitchers a fair bit. You look at the actual worth of those pitchers hitting sometimes, and it it's sort of sometimes I think, well, why have they got the DH rule when they just bunt the guy, and even in circumstances where it's not a bunt situation, but just to protect the hitter. But you guys actually really came out swinging and were there to do the best you could.
Well, you had to. It was as simple as that. Okay, we batted number 8 or 9 in the lineup, but that's just the way it was. But that 8 or 9 in the lineup was usually fairly useful with guys that that could hit the ball.
And where with your state representation, it all sort of began in
'64 was the first Claxton Shield I played in. Yes, yeah. That was held in Melbourne. The first game I pitched was against Queensland, and we won that. I think 6-0, I think, if I remember rightly. The second game outing I had was against WA. We won that 3-2, I think, in the 9th innings, and we were lucky to win that one, to be quite honest. But we won the whole series. We won 7 games out of 8. When you consider the team the year before had won 1 game out of 8. So we're a group of kids came in and took it.
Was Kingsley always the man at the helm, or
man at the helm that particular year? That was my first year. Obviously, he was there the year before, I think, as well. I think, but I'm not sure. But you're talking about a group of guys that were playing in night baseball, which had combined teams, and that's what I stem back to. That combined team situation is absolutely. You had to be. You had to be every week.
Still, it's a pretty special time when, even with combined teams, that they can still be so strong and so passionate about what they're doing. We often see, again, we've tried that format and it was okay, but it often still came to who was available and who could get there by 5 o'clock and that sort of thing. Was it the same then?
Absolutely. It was even worse then. I mean, I know there were times when I had to take time off without pay to go and represent the state or whatever, and it wasn't easy, but you did it because you loved the game.
Pagey, a signed player, Cincinnati Reds, surely one of the first Australians to perhaps ever be signed in the great American League. Would that be correct?
Well, I think the first of the modern era. A couple of guys went over the year after. Dick Shirt and Kevin Greatrex went over. It was a bit of an unfortunate thing where I was not supposed to play any more games and I wanted to play one more. Got out of bed from a bout of tonsillitis for a week. Played 2 days later and had nothing left of my arm and my legs. Tore the tendons of my elbow, and that was it, basically.
And that, I know you then tried to rehab or at least rest and get yourself right. And the gentleman, the Victorian that signed you, Ross Straw, set up a game to showcase you again, or at least say, hey, you know, here he is, and this is what we got. And what was the outcome of all of that?
Not good, not good at all. I really had nothing on the ball at all, and I got hit all over the park, and you know, it was just a fairly terrible experience as far as I was concerned. It took me a couple of years to come back from that, which was 67 when we went to Perth.
Yeah, and you know how cutthroat high-level sport can be. They basically wrote you off.
Well, Ross wrote me off. He actually said I would never play A grade again, let alone state ball, and that was shoved down his throat actually by my mother many years later in 1969 when I was awarded the Helms Award in Melbourne.
Incredible, for representing South Australia, or yep. So you won your first Helms in a winning series.
Yeah, that was the year that we won 8 games out of 8, and nobody's ever done that again since. Had a fantastic team.
Neil, you've had some incredible highlights, apart from Helms Awards, which we'll talk about, Australian representation, assigned professional, amazing. You know, your career really, any boxes you feel as if you didn't tick.
Yeah, going to America was one of them. Unfortunately, it was one of those things that happened. I got an injury. That's the end of it. But I was fortunate a couple of years later to be able to get back into the Claxton Shield side again, and I think really I probably went from strength to strength there, if the truth's known.
You really caused quite a bit of a stir in perhaps what was a very, you know, staid competition with regards to movement within states. You went to Western Australia.
Yes, that was a personal decision to go, and just a change of scenery, I guess. I just felt I needed a change in my life, and I was fortunate that Kerry Wither from New South Wales was going to WA, and he rang me and said, "Oh, do you want to come over and play?" And I thought, yeah, why not?
And that was an incredible time for you. You played for Swan Districts, did you say?
I played for Swan Districts for a couple of years, and then I played for University for 1 year before I came back here, yeah.
And your record in WA, I believe, was 8-0 in Claxton Shield or in...
Yeah, I was 8-0 was it. It was pretty fair, I thought.
2 Helms Awards.
Only the one, yeah. I was runner-up a couple of times, I know, but that's it. As far as I'm concerned, the Claxton Shield was it. Helms Award was something different. That was just a personal thing.
You've talked to me about some players that you played with over there and some of the quality and a particular shortstop that...
Yeah, a fellow by the name of Rick Pence. He was, all due respects to Dave Mundy. Dave Mundy was a wonderful player. Rick just had something special. He had quick hands, he had a great arm, he covered so much ground, and he did some incredible plays when I played with him. I played with him at Swan Districts and also in the WA side, yeah.
There was a particular ball game here in the local competition. You were playing for Goodwood, and you met your foes in Port Adelaide, and it ended up being a 19-inning grand final where you've gone the whole distance.
The nemesis, Port Adelaide. Yeah, it was, look, people still talk about that game. I have vague memories of it because I was a little bit tired towards the end. More than a little bit, but it was just a fantastic game to be involved with. It really was.
And it was a low scoring game, so it was predominantly what we could call pitcher dominated.
Well, we scored 2 runs in the first, Port scored 2 runs in the first, and then nobody scored until the 19th. And when that happened, Dave Mundy was on second base, got on with a safe hit. Kevin Greatrix came up to bat, and he made some comments to Warren Charles, who was the umpire, and said, "We've got to get him this time." And he did. I hung a slider and I saw his eyes light up and that was it. He just went over the fence by about 6 inches apparently.
Again, these names that you're bringing back and to sort of see that, you know, Kevin thought that the game had gone on long enough.
It was about 12:30 at night. Buses had stopped and whatever. So,
and especially a guy like Kevin, who, you know, without having to, you know, individualise somebody, but a very special hitter, and obviously being a guy that was out there, you know, 60 feet 6 inches away, having to combat him on many an occasion. He was a pretty special hitter.
I class him as probably the most technically correct right-hand hitter I've ever seen. A fella in WA by the name of Bob Ossie, who was an American, he was one of the most technically correct left-hand hitters I've ever seen. But Kevin, yeah, he was something special.
Yeah, and he ended up making your night a little bit of a nightmare.
Yes, he did, which he's done several times before, but that's okay, that's part of the course.
I think that's one of the great aspects of a pitcher that, you know, at the end of the day, regardless of which way you want to look at it, I mean, the game revolves around the pitcher.
Well, it does. I mean, nothing starts until you throw the ball.
And you sort of, you have such a greater record at Claxton Shield level than you do at club level in the manner that, whether it by good luck or good fortune, that how many Claxton Shields do you take out collectively?
Couldn't tell you the numbers, but I know my win-loss record for South Australia was 15-3, and for WA it was 8-8, or 8-0. I had an ERA of less than 1 in both leagues, which is, I find fairly staggering actually when I look back at it. But we won a lot of Claxton Shields for South Australia, and I helped win 2 for WA as well. The first one they'd won for 39 years, I think it was.
And you're such a unique type of guy in the way that you really did study opposition, and you looked at other competitions and other pitches, etc., and you really tried to pick the best out and see the best in what could advance you, because you had an enormous array of pitches.
Yes, I did, and I was lucky to have control of most of them pretty well, and I could change speeds and directions and all sorts of things, which made it pretty tough for some of the hitters if they were trying to guess.
Yeah, and one pitch in particular, a very slow curveball that you perfected, you first saw, I think, by an American?
No, I learnt that from the 1970 Japanese team that came out here, a chap by the name of Smiley Yoshida, and he had our guys tied up with this pitch. He would throw it about 80, 85 miles an hour, but then he would come in with this 30 miles an hour curveball, just junk. And I thought, yeah, I can use that, which I did with great effect.
And as you were saying, you also used different arm slots and etc. to throw this one and that one and this one, and you know, you ended up having about 8 pitches that you could say that you pretty well owned.
Yeah, well, I had variations on curveballs. I had a screwball from a couple of different positions, and I had a slider and a fork ball, and I used a 2-seam fastball and a 4-seam fastball, and one tended to kick up and the other one went down. So yeah, I had a few variations there, and as I said, I could control them fairly well.
Neil, I'm looking over your shoulder there and I'm seeing an incredible array of achievements from you. You know, I'm seeing something from the Queen Elizabeth. What was that about?
The Centenary Medal, the Bicentennial Medal, which was given to quite a lot of people in a lot of different sports, and I was one of the lucky ones to receive it, I guess. You receive some things, plaudits for playing the game or whatever. You don't play it for that, you just play it for the love of the game. But I was very, very honoured to have received that, yeah.
You sort of sit back now and really reflect on things and the journey that you took.
It's only the last few years that I've really realised what I achieved. As I said before, I just played the game for the love of the game, wanted to win, obviously, with a passion, without question. And so did a lot of the other guys I played with. And that was what made it very special, that they had the same brain fade, if you like to put it that way, that we just wanted to win.
I think that's what we sort of alluded to earlier in our conversation with regards to a group coming together that seemed to have this, you know, regardless of all of their little ins and outs and their ways and means, is that there was just this one very common goal, and that was to sort of unite as a group and do the very best we can, because I think you knew you were capable of achieving some outstanding results.
Well, so that's one thing where Kingsley was great. He was great at bringing people together and getting them to operate as a team. So, yeah, we were very lucky to have Kingsley as a coach, to be quite honest.
I think you're right, and I mean, even looking at that man now, and I'd perhaps like you to elaborate a little bit about Kingsley, because coaches of his perhaps calibre come along every so often, and just this unique individual able to sort of mould this group together that are highly talented individuals, but take away all the ego and somehow just really press with this common goal.
Yeah, he had a great understanding of the game, and he had a good understanding of people and how to use them in certain situations, which is basically what he did. But he was a great student of the game. Still is, actually.
Yeah, you admire him greatly, don't you?
He was a hard taskmaster, don't worry about that. But the people under him knew what they had to do, and he called the shots, and that was all there was to it.
And you years through the district competition where you moved a little bit from had a good strong stint at Glenelg, a little stint at Adelaide, and then moved to Goodwood, and finished your career at Goodwood.
In South Australia, yes, yeah. No, I had Kingsley as a coach in Adelaide, at Adelaide, and Tom Gadd was another coach who I had a lot of time for in regards to his trainings and his attitude to players and things like that. He was great to play under. He really was.
I think again for a baseball enthusiast, and having an American come here that, you know, chewed the fat and did the American things, that Tom was quite a unique individual, and to this day still remains an incredibly unique individual. We saw the Legends game at Norwood Oval this year, and I have no idea of Tom's age, but it must be in the mid-80s.
No. He's only about 72, 73.
Come on.
No, fact. But he also played double A in America, and he was unlucky. The reason why he wears glasses is because somebody turned a double play on him down in Mexico and hit him between the eyes, and that's why he got farmed out of double A, basically. Right. But he had a great baseball knowledge, great guy, and knew a lot about the game.
Danny, your son, obviously ventured into baseball and followed in his father's footsteps, and has had quite some achievements himself.
Yes, he did. I mean, both the kids played T-ball and Pee-wee down at Glenelg. Of course, Alison didn't go on with it, obviously, but Daniel did. And he played for Adelaide, for Glenelg for many years as a pitcher and what have you there. And he played state, and he played in one of the Australian development teams and what have you. So, yeah, he did a fantastic job. Yeah, he was one of the best closers of the modern era as far as that's concerned. You know, they'd bring him in the last innings or two innings, and he would just mow them down, basically. Yeah.
And again, even though in stature he's a lot taller than you, but in looking at some still footage of you with regards to your big leg kick and stretching out, that Daniel obviously picked up a few hints along the way, because he had some very strong action with his leg kick. And
I have a photo in there of him, and people say to me, "Oh, was that you?" I said, "No, that's Dan." So yeah, he had some great mechanics, and he did well.
So what's your summary of your baseball career? What do you reflect on now and sit and think, and if you were to sort of somehow summarise the Neil Page story, what could you, how could you do that?
Very difficult question, Andrew. As I said, it's only really the last few years that I've sort of come to grips with what I actually did, and people still talk about things, and you know, I read things and what have you. But you know, I can't really sum it up, to be quite honest. I'm very proud of what I did, but you know, I can't sum it up.
You know, what was it? What was it like? It's very difficult for, you know, a guy like me to sort of look back into the 50s and the 60s and to try to imagine what a game of baseball was like being played. You sort of look at old footage and, you know, what were the times like then to sort of work through those? Were they?
We didn't have the people out here that could actually teach us properly. We were lucky when the Japanese really opened our eyes. You know, we were getting some feedback from America, but you'd see the odd game on television or whatever, or at the movies. But the Japanese started to make us change how we played the game and lift our standards, and we needed to. When they first came out here, we thought, oh my God, you know, how are we ever going to beat them? But it took us 2 or 3 years, and we started to lift our game, and we learned how to beat them. Not every time, but we learnt how to compete with them.
I think we really sort of deprived of that a little bit to see the touring teams that used to come out here, and I think you were pretty blessed that you know, with the Japanese touring teams, and I saw a Manila, like an all-star Manila team came out here and gave you a bit of a licking.
The Filipino teams, I think, were influenced a bit by the Americans during the war. And that's where their baseball got really started. A bit likewise with Korea. The Koreans have got some very, very good players, and have always had. But the Japanese are different, and they were really tough to beat.
Yeah, you really admire the Japanese way. It sort of seemed to, you know, looking and in discussion with you, it seemed to inspire you and take you to another level.
Well, we found that the Japanese, they would work from 8 until, say, 12, and then they would go out and train from 1 until 5 or 6 every day, basically. The first team that came here, we remember seeing them down at the Haven Motel down at Glenelg, and before they went to bed, they had to take 200 cuts of the bat every time, every night, without fail. One shortstop made an error, and they trained for 2 hours one day, and then they made him take ground ball after ground ball, probably about 150, till he dropped to his knees and couldn't field anymore. That's the sort of playing acumen they've got, and they love the game.
Do you watch much baseball now?
Not a lot, to be quite honest. I've got a few other things on my plate, but I'll watch them sometimes. I'll go out to the bite every now and again, but not a lot. I do a fair bit down at Glenelg, especially with the kids. That gives me a lot of pleasure, actually, trying to teach the kids, and the ones that are receptive, I tend to probably put a bit more time into them than some of the others who are not so receptive, if you know what I mean.
There's a lot to reminisce about, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a few things there I'm pretty proud of, yeah.
Where do we start?
Yeah, good question, actually.
Where do we start in amongst your...
There are some things there from, like, individual trophies from the news, you know, during night baseball. There's the centenary team from Adelaide Baseball Club. That's my 2005 inaugural medal for the Hall of Fame. And then you've got the 75th anniversary teams from WA, South Australia, and the Australian team, and the bat that goes with it. So, yeah, there's a few things there I'm very proud of.
Absolutely, there you are as the right-hand hitter.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people still probably don't believe that, but still.
No, I was looking back, you know, hitting, and, you know, I mean, considering the job for you was to get the job done out in the middle, to stride into the batter's box and do such a good job, you still must feel pretty proud of yourself.
Yeah, I do in that vein, because, you know, Kingsley said to me actually that he would always put me in as a pinch hitter if we needed some runs batted in. He would do that because he knew I hit to centre right, and that's how you get to drive runs in.
Yeah. You know, time by time, you look at these sorts of things, and surely it must
Occasionally.
bring a tear to the eye and think, wow, there's my life wrapped up in a bookcase. Huh?
Pretty much you're right there. Yeah.
Incredible. And this photo with all of your colleagues here of that 75th anniversary.
Yeah, that was fairly special, I can tell you.
Must have met up with some guys there that you hadn't seen for a while.
Hadn't seen for a long, long time, you know. I mean, Ray Michelle I hadn't seen for a while, and of course he's passed from us now. You know, Dick Shirt, Kingsley, you know, the whole range of the guys there. You know, Graham Lloyd is another one. He was the, I mean, he's head and shoulders above everybody, right? Everybody else was about 6'9", but he played, he got 2 World Series rings with the New York Yankees. Yeah. So, you know, it's a pretty special team there.
Yeah. And this little one here with you there with the trophy.
With Charger, that's the Helms Award. That I won in '69, which came with that and that certificate. And that again was a very special time for me, having come back from what I had to endure over a couple of years with arm injuries and what have you. That was very special to me, that one.
In charge of being Ron Sharp.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I remember going into the Henley Grange Baseball Club and seeing you know, a fantastic plaque of Ron up there, and again as a guy that didn't grow in those times and not really perhaps recognising, you know, how enormous a guy like Ron Sharp, you know, holds in the world of baseball.
Well, so he should too. You know, I mean, the Helms Athletic Foundation named him as you know, as the best that's ever been in Australia as far as that's concerned. So
wow,
it's pretty special.
Sure is.
And I never ever knew Ron apart from being in a wheel bed, you know, watching us play. They used to go out every Wednesday night, a group from the Home from Incurables. And I always made a point to go up and talk to him, and he gave me a couple of pointers about a couple of things as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. So,
we're still great critics, aren't we? No matter how old.
Absolutely right. Yeah, no, Ron was a special sort of guy.
Yeah. Well, Neil, as we said before, I mean, to look back and to look at, you know, that you've sort of played such a major part in the history of baseball in this state. It's you know, you should be very proud of yourself.
Yeah, I am. I mean, it was basically my dad that got me into it, and he came from a football background, funnily enough, and he got roped into baseball by Bruce Doolan from West Torrens, and that's how we got into it as kids, basically. So, and it just went from there.
And the whole family have forged their way in it in some shape or form.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been a real pleasure now. And hopefully we can do a few more of these and talk to some guys that you've played with and that were old teammates.
That'll be interesting.
You can sit back and look at a few of them.
I will do that with interest,
what
actually.
Got to say about things.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, again, Pagey,